with the broken and still successful release of Jedi Survivor, it's almost assured of a sequel at this point because we know how much Star Wars loves their trilogies. Rest in Pepperoni, the KOTOR series, and both Battlefront series. I'm still really heated how close we got to a Battlefront 3. I heated it, I tell you. But of course, all disappointing thoughts aside, it's pretty much guaranteed at this point with the machinations going on in Star Wars Entertainment. But I think today what we're going to be talking about will help this Jedi series go out with a big, loud bang. Honestly, maybe not that loud of the bang. That is the Death Star's destruction, after all, and that's not can always be considered a good thing going out like that, or a bad thing. Let's be honest. But regardless, I think the big thing the eventual sequel to Survivor needs is to bring back choices to the player. More importantly, the choices of Dark and Light, which, if you lived through the golden era of Star Wars games, was something we got in a lot of them. And do you pick the canon ending, the light side ending, or do you become a super edgelord and take the dark side path? Now, we haven't seen like anything like that in the new era of Star Wars games, but with the copium, massive amounts of copium, KOTOR remakes still being developed, question mark, and it having those choices, it would be nice to see it return. Now, the games I'm going to be referring to that really goes in on the dark side choices of Knights of the Republic 1 and 2, and Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, because out of all the Lucas era Star Wars games, they are the ones with a heavy focus on dark side choices. A lot of the games just you get to a certain point and you make a choice, dark or light. These games really made a focus on it. Dark Force 2 allowed you to kill innocent bystanders, which would give you dark side points, pushing you farther into the dark side. And I believe using dark side abilities would also influence that. Of course, these were all acquired from points you would get from finding all the secrets and missions and completing missions. It would also solidify your dark side ending, which is Kyle Katarn's case involved. I believe it's Jan or Jin dying and him becoming a Dark Jedi in the Imperial Remnant. With KOTOR 1 and 2, uh, it had a heavy focus on making dark and light, and they were absolute choices. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the big focus was like for me is like KOTOR 2. About one third into the game, you reach a certain level, and if your dark side points are high enough, then you get a Sith class, and that in turn would mark your ending because you can still go through the light side ending and kill all the Jedi and still be a Jedi, quote unquote, and still get the light side ending. But essentially, the dark side ending for KOTOR 2 is Malachor 5 survives, and you essentially have killed all your companions except, I think, Atten. Now, I'm not saying Jedi Survivor its sequel needs to go that extreme, but I think as players we deserve choices in our game. If you played through Jedi Survivor, you know Cal touches on the dark side of the Force near the end of the game, using a very potent dark side ability known as Force Crush on Denvik. I believe that's his name in Bode, nearly killing them. But again, worse, that's the big thing. He chose not to continue through with it. Cal is also left behind the Jedi Order to be with Marin. Big thing right there. So this feels like the ultimate conclusion in this into the trilogy to allow Cal to embrace the dark side of the Force, just like he had at the end of Survivor. Cal has lost a lot in the years facing the Empire. Uh, Before Seer, it was Gerald. He lost him when Order 66 was made. Seer lost. Uh, Cal lost Seer at the hands of Darth Vader, so it only makes sense that Cal is close to the edge. It would make, I think, sense from a narrative decision for him to give in more and more. He could gain access to dark side abilities like Force Lightning, Force Choke, a more important, potent version of Force Crush, and abilities like Force Scream and Life Drain. And the stronger his connection to the dark side, i.e., committing dark side acts, the more potent his dark side abilities become, allowing him to do more with them. He can also start out with these abilities in their at their most basic forms, and the more he gives into the dark side, the stronger these abilities get to the point. And they get to the point where his Force Lightning is on par with the likes of Palpatine or Star Killer, and maybe I wouldn't. Well, maybe Star Killer, not Palpatine, and maybe introduced abilities like Star Killer had, where he could merge his lightning into his lightsaber, or he's able to choke more people at a time and drain life a lot faster. Or with something like Force Scream, he's able to disorient people longer if they don't die from the immediate Force Scream. But the same could be said for light side abilities. He could gain access to light side abilities that could get stronger as he maintains his connection to the light. Maybe we actually get to see in canon for the first time Electric Judgment, which was sort of the light side alternative to Force Lightning. and it'd be for Cal to tap into where it becomes stronger the more he stays connected to the light, and it could be stronger and it could stun enemies longer, and if they have low enough health, take them out. He could also gain access to force abilities like protection and heal, and the longer he stays true to the light, the more potent they become. And heck, maybe even gets access to force pulse, which I think he had it in the first game. And again, it's been a minute since I played it, and of course, these abilities would be amplified by his connection to the light. Essentially, we get our Canon Star Killer in the final game, which would be, I think, pretty awesome in all honesty, since bringing Star Killer back in canon would just delude. Um, I think dilute him as a character. The book does a better job than the games, if I'm being honest. Like whenever they start the final game, I feel like it's absolutely necessary for Cal to have access to more force abilities because it makes the most sense as strong as he's become. I think he's already past Seer in terms of power and connection to the force. But of course, only time will tell. But for this to work, I feel that this is where the choices come into play, and it's the most important thing. Throughout the game, you can make choices and decisions, whether they're good or bad, much like the KOTOR games and Dark Forces 2. But these choices will very much put you on a collision with the dark side ending. Dark Forces 2 allowed you to kill innocent people, which is still, even for its time, was kind of wild. And that, of course, gave you dark side points, which you would turn push you towards the dark side. So Cal committing similar acts would also push him towards the dark side. And with this being the final game, I think the dark side ending must be pretty gnarly. Let's say, much like KOTOR 1, Cal comes to a moment in the game that is the point of no return. So if he commits this act with the dark side, he's on the path to a very dark ending. Similar to Revan making the choice on the unknown world and becoming Darth Revan again. Cal would get a choice to which there is no turning back, and if he chooses at that moment to give in to the dark side, his fall would be complete. Of course, Cal at certain moments could use the dark side, whether it's killing someone or torturing someone or portraying someone to say the Empire and ratting them out. And similar to the KOTOR games, and slowly over time, his body would be corrupted by the dark side. His eyes would turn yellow, his skin would get cracked or darkened, being corrupted by the dark side. And of course, cherry on top, his hair would become darker, all polluting the man who once was, all culminating into a very dark ending where Cal loses everyone. And much like the Force Unleashed ending, come into collision with the Dark Lord of the Sith, the Toaster in human form, Mr. Iron Lung himself, Darth Vader. And because this is the dark side ending, he's able to kill Vader, all while the elderly, geriatric Dark Lord Palpatine watches on in delight. But this isn't the Force Unleashed dark side ending where Cal has someone to try and save and kill old Grandpa Palpatine. Oh no, Palpatine gives him a chance to join him, and because the dark side has corrupted Cal, and because up until this point, Cal doesn't have anyone else anymore because of his actions leading up to it, where everyone from Grease, Marin, and Kata are dead or captured, he willingly accepts Palpatine's most gracious kind offer as his apprentice, and he's given the new title as a Sith Lord. And I know, of course, this seems very unlikely for Cal, but given that he's touched upon the dark side and then, in his own words, has left the Jedi Order from Aaron, I do find it very possible for Cal to start giving in more to it. And what better way to do that than give us choices for the final send off of this Jedi series? Now, with us getting a dark side ending, that means we could get DLC, much like the Force Unleashed games. That's my copium. I did, and they are some of the most edgy, best what ifs that I, of course, enjoyed growing up. I actually played them recently. Still the best. Why not do the same for Cal? Only this time, do all three movies of the original trilogy from Star Wars to Return, having this newly Christian Sith Lord hunting down familiar characters. Maybe we even get Rebels DLC where he hunts Kanan and the crew and comes face to face with Ahsoka. Essentially, the plot of Rebels in that season where Vader show up, it leads into Malachor. Cal reveals that Anakin and Vader were one and the same, and he killed him, and that breaks Ahsoka, and he's able to finish off the Rebels crew and Ahsoka. Uh, Fast forward to Star Wars: A New Hope, we get an opening crawl that things look very grim for the Rebel Alliance as Palpatine's new apprentice has been very efficient at hunting down key Rebel leaders. But the kicker is the Death Star is destroyed this time around by Luke Skywalker. Again, the entire um, timeline is just thrown out of whack. So suspended your belief for a minute. And Luke Skywalker has already joined the Rebel Alliance. He's destroyed the Death Star. He's been training with a very much alive Obi-Wan because Vader isn't alive, and Obi-Wan since his old apprentice death years ago. So he pretty much told Owen and Beru, we have to train him. There is no if ands or buts about it. The story would be different with Cal searching out Obi-Wan to kill him and to give Skywalker to Palpatine because, of course, Palpatine senses Luke's power and wants it for himself. This would, in turn, wouldn't end the way Obi-Wan would sacrifice himself for Luke in A New Hope. This would end differently, with them both escaping, leading into Empire, where Luke is leading the Rebel Alliance in fights against the Empire. Obi-Wan would also be in turn training Leia this time around, and Empire would essentially go over the course of the entire Empire Strikes Back very differently because Vader is not around, and it would end with Obi-Wan and Yoda both dying on Dagobah by Cal. But this also would leave Cal very damaged, where he would be so damaged in the process that he would have to have a new suit similar to Vader. And of course, by the time we get to Return, Cal is very much like Vader, broken, damaged to the point where he can't live without a suit. Uh, we also have this DLC where the Rebels destroy the Death Star, but Luke and Leia are facing Cal somewhere else and not Endor. Luke is essentially killed by Cal, and Leia is turned to the dark side and brought before Palpatine, thus ending on a very dark ending, and not with and with Palpatine sending Cal to end the Rebel threat once and for all. Of course, this isn't going to happen, but I really love the edginess of the Force Unleashed DLC, so it'd be pretty cool to get that because I feel like that's always fine in small doses, which is why both the Force Unleashed 1 and 2 DLC works. So, uh, well, because of non-canon ending where everyone is up for grabs, it would be cool if Respawn just cut freaking loose and ended the Jedi trilogy with an absolute banger drop of dark side edginess. What if totally would never happen in a million years DLC? It would pay homage to what came before while giving everyone that crazy what if dark side DLC that we only really got to see once. Of course, a man can dream, and what I talked about today will 99.999% not happen. It would be pretty cool if it did because I love getting edgy stories in small doses. And it's always fun when developers go ham on established lore. That's why I like the Force Unleashed DLC. It goes crazy. It allows you to suspend your belief for just a minute and think, yeah, it'd be pretty cool to see what would happen if Vader died and Luke's just there by himself. But that's kind of the end of the video. I want to hear what you guys think. Would you like choices in the eventual Jedi sequel? Because the odds of the KOTOR remake actually happen are getting grimmer and darker. I'm having the hope that 100% Star Wars is correct, though. Would you like that sort of thing? Would you like the eventual into the trilogy give player choices? Would you like to have influences like the KOTOR games, where the more dark side acts you commit, the darker you look, the more evil you look? I think it'd be pretty cool. Give the Jedi series a crazy send off into what is space and pay homage to what came before. But let me know what you guys think down below. Of course, this is the end of the video, so if you enjoyed the content, leave a like because it helps me get farther into the algorithm. And if you're feeling really generous, consider subscribing and turning on notification bells. But that's the video, guys. I love you all. I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.